In this video, I'm going to show you how to install a graphics card. Specifically, I'm going to show you how to install the Sapphire Pure RX 7700 XT Frostpunk 2 limited edition graphics card. I'm going to show you how to remove your old graphics card, remove all of the drivers and everything from this card so that you can install your brand new card. And then I'm going to show you how to install the drivers and all of the software to control the RGB lighting on your card as well. And then also how to optimize your card to get the best performance. Without wasting any more time, let's get started. Now, before we can actually get that beautiful card inside of the system, we need to do some prep work. So we're going to start off by going to AMD.com. Then we'll go under Resources and Support. Under Radeon Graphics and AMD Chipset, we'll click Drivers. Scroll down a little tiny bit. Then we'll select Graphics. Then we'll select Radeon RX. And because we're using a 7700, we're going to select Radeon RX 7000 series. And finally, AMD Radeon RX 7700 XT. So click Submit. And then we're going to select our operating system. So we'll select Windows 11 64-bit. And then we're going to skip Auto Detect. We're going to go directly to AMD Software Adrenaline Edition. This is the driver for the graphics card. And we'll click Download. We need graphics drivers for the graphics card so that we can unlock all of the potential of the card so we can actually utilize all the resources the card provides. So then afterwards, we'll go to Sapphire to download Sapphire Tricks. We'll click here and then we'll go to wagnerdsoft.com and skip the ad. We'll click Display Driver Uninstaller. Scroll down a bit and then click here for download and support. Scroll down a little bit more. Display driver uninstaller, whatever the version is here. And then DDU portable self-extracting. So click here and that downloads here. So we've just downloaded the graphics drivers, then the trick software to control all the RGB lighting on the card itself, and then DDU to remove the old graphics drivers the system has already. So now we're going to go ahead and utilize DDU, but we can't just use it right in this version of Windows. We need to get into safe mode. First off, we're going to go ahead, click on this little folder here for the download, or go to your downloads directory, and then we'll double click on DDU. I'm going to change the extraction folder to my C drive and then the folder called DDU. So we'll close out of this for now. And now we're going to hold the left shift key. We'll right click on the start button, hover over shutdown or sign out, and then click restart. We can let go of the left shift key now. So now here we're going to select troubleshoot. On this page, we're going to select advanced options, and then we're going to click startup settings. Under startup settings, restart to change Windows options such as, we're going to need enable safe mode here. So we'll click restart. And then under the startup settings windows, we're going to select number 4, enable safe mode. So we'll hit the number 4 on our keyboard. We're in safe mode so that we can remove the drivers. Now, mind you, we can of course remove them inside of the regular environment of Windows that we use every single day, but chances are it's going to hold back a lot of those drivers. You can use the AMD software as well or DDU within Windows, but you can't really remove the drivers completely while the drivers are in use. In safe mode, the drivers are not in use, so that gives us the ability to remove everything. So now that we're in Windows, in safe mode, we'll click File Explorer. Then we'll go to this PC, the C drive, DDU, and then click Display Driver Uninstaller. Click OK here since it is the first time we use it. So first off, we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom and we're going to place a check under Prevent downloads of drivers from Windows Update when Windows search for a device. Place a check there. Click OK here. Now this part you have to be careful. AMD specific option. Because we are using an AMD processor, we're going to want to make sure to uncheck here. Now, if we were using an Intel processor, we're going to want to place checks all in here. So again, since we're using AMD, a processor, we'll remove all of this here because it can play with the chipset driver, as it states right over here. Since we're removing an NVIDIA card, we want to make sure we place checks here. Now, even if we were removing an AMD card, it doesn't hurt to place checks on the NVIDIA specific options either. So again, since we have an AMD processor, remove all of this and then place prevent downloads from drivers. And then because the Windows is oversized, we're going to minimize this a tiny bit so that we can actually click close here. So then on this screen, under select device type, we're going to select GPU for the graphics card. And then the card that we have here is NVIDIA. So we're going to make sure to select NVIDIA. If we had an AMD card, we would select AMD. Or if we had an Intel card, we would select Intel. Again, we're using NVIDIA right now. If you're going from AMD to AMD, I highly recommend you use it. If you're going from NVIDIA to AMD, use it. Intel to AMD. Any card to any card, I highly recommend you do it, because over time, as you install graphics drivers as it is, you're leaving remnants of that driver behind unless you used DDU before. You're building on top of an unstable structure, so that causes a lot of potential issues. Issues you might run into while you're gaming. Nobody wants that. So DDU, make sure you have a clean slate so that you can start building your structure. And then here we're going to select clean and shutdown, because now at this point we're going to uninstall all of the drivers, because now it's prepared for the AMD card, and then we're going to shut it down so that we can actually remove this old graphics card and then install the AMD card in its place. This only takes a few seconds. Now we're going to want to make sure just disconnect all of the cables from the back of your PC. Leave the power cable connected to the power supply, but flick it off, because if you leave that on, sometimes while you're playing inside of the computer, it can cause the computer to turn on. We don't want it to turn on while we're playing inside. Now, before we actually touch anything inside of this system, make sure to touch the inside of the case, metal parts inside of the case, to ground yourself. If you leave to go to the bathroom or go grab something to eat and you come back to your PC while you're playing inside of it, touch the metal parts again, because you build up ESD as you're walking around and you don't want to zap anything inside of your system. Again, just touch the inside metal parts of the case. Now, this part is going to be different on different cards. On the cable, there's a little clip holding the card in place, so you can pull as much as you want, but it's not going to go anywhere unless you break it, of course. But you need to push this clip. It could be on top or on the bottom. On this card, it's on the bottom. So press and hold that and then pull it out, and that releases the PCIe cable from the card itself. So we'll set that aside for now. And now, using a Phillips head screwdriver, we're going to remove these screws here, holding the card in place. Okay, now typically you're going to be doing this with the system laying down. I have to do it with the system standing up because it's a lot easier to record. Even though we removed the PCIe cable and the screws over here, we can't just pull the card out. It's not going to go anywhere. If you pull too hard, you'll end up breaking the PCIe slot. The card is actually locked right in place over here with this little plastic clip, and it could be different on different types of motherboards. But on this particular board, we're going to go ahead and hold the card and then push this little plastic clip down. Now, you may not be able to notice because it's a small movement, but that's going to push the card out a tiny bit. So just push it right here. Okay, and that releases the card. And now we've removed the old graphics card. Now, this part is an extra, but you don't have to do this unless you're okay using Tricks. Tricks is nice, but if you want to use your motherboard's own software utility or open RGB, signal RGB to control the RGB lighting on the card, you'll want to utilize an ARGB cable. I have links down below for it if you want to check it out, but we're going to connect the card to the motherboard. So let's do this before we actually get the card in, just so that we have a little more space. So we'll just use an open ARGB port, which we have one down here, and just connect it real quick. And now we'll just have it connected there. So now that we install the card, we'll connect that as well. So now we'll grab the card. Utilizing these pins here, we're gonna go ahead and slide them right into the PCIe slot. All right, so we'll just slide that right in here. Might take a few tries to align it correctly. And then we'll want to make sure we make these gold fingers disappear. So push that right into the slot. Now, another thing happened when we pushed that card into the slot. This locking mechanism locked in place. So to remove it again, we'll push it in. That releases the card. So now once I push it in, you'll see that click up, locking it right in place. Very small movement, but that went ahead and locked the card in place. And now we'll screw the card right in. All right. So then now we'll connect the ARGB cable that we just connected to the motherboard. We'll connect that right over here. Such a simple connection, but it's so hard to get in properly. Now that the card is in, we'll want to connect the PCIe cables to the card. Now notice this is a PCIe cable that goes to an 8-pin, but it's also a 6+2, so you can use either a 6+2 or an 8-pin PCIe cable, or VGA it'll say, but it also has a daisy chained another 8-pin. Don't use this. Use another cable. That way you get direct power to your card. There is nothing split. So we'll set this off to the side. If you remember before, the little clip was on the bottom. On this particular card, the clip would be on the top. So then we would just turn it around and clip that right in place. Now let me show you a little bit closer. So again, grabbing another cable, we'll turn it around so that the clip is at the very top. And then we'll push that right in here. And then you'll see this little arm click right into that piece right up there. And it's locked in place. Now you might be asking, where did these cables come from? These came from the power supply. Turning the system around. So this is the rear side of the case. Removing this panel. And removing this. You see down here, there's a big cluster of cables. Now, if we move this over here, we can see 1000 GT or EVGA Supernova 1000 GT. That's the model number of my particular power supply. And then we can go online to find out what kind of power supply it is and to see how many PCIe cables it has, because again, this particular card requires 2 individual PCIe cables, 8-pin cables, not CPU, EPS, PCIe 8-pin cables. And again, they come from your power supply. And that's just where my power supply is. Your system might be a little bit different, but I just wanted to let you know where that PCIe cable came from. Now that we have everything cabled and everything looking halfway decent, let's go ahead and plug in all the cables on the back of the system. And just make sure, if maybe you weren't coming from another graphics card, maybe you were using your graphics up here on your IO, make sure you connect your HDMI or your DP cable into your brand new graphics card. And then we'll just connect the rest of our system. And now, flick it back on. Now we'll go ahead and turn her on. All right, and she turns on with that Frostpunk orange. Careful with those cables. I just had a cable hitting the fan. Now that we're back in Windows, we'll go ahead and click on the File Explorer. Then we'll go to Downloads, and then we'll install the Wickle AMD Software Adrenaline Edition, the driver, and then click Run. Then here we'll select Additional Options and Full Install. Even though we've already used DDU to remove all the drivers, we're going to select a check here, Factory Reset, just in case it missed anything. And then I uncheck this part, and then I click Install. Now that we're done installing that, let's go ahead and click Finish, and then we'll manually right click on the Start button, hover over Shutdown or Sign Out, and then click Restart. Now, after coming back into Windows, we'll right click on the desktop, then we'll select AMD Software Adrenaline Edition. We'll go ahead and skip this. Then we'll click on the little gear over here, and under Display, we'll want to enable AMD FreeSync. It's not supported right now because I'm using a capture card, but if your monitor supports AMD FreeSync, you'll get a ton of performance if you enable that as well. It'll just make things a lot more smooth. Then, of course, you can go around the software and playing with different settings. You have a ton of different things you can do from here. You can make sure your drivers are up to date through here. And then you can, as we already showed you a second ago, go through FreeSync and a bunch of the other settings for performance. Then audio and video settings, different profiles, different hotkeys, Relive VR, preferences, and then record and stream. This is the actual Relive software. We can actually record directly from here. We can live stream from here. Scene editor. This is the different kinds of media you might have on here. Settings, different performance metrics, and overclocking and tuning. We'll just close out of here. Now, one other thing that we need to do for performance sake is, again, right click on the background. We'll come to display settings, scroll down a little bit, and we'll find advanced display. Choose a refresh rate. You want to select the maximum your monitor supports. Because I'm using a capture card, it only goes up to 60. But without a capture card, it goes up to 120. Yours may go up even higher. So set that and then click OK, and then you'll be perfectly optimized. That's on the performance, but I didn't forget about the RGB. We'll come back into File Explorer. We'll go into Download and then open up Tricks and run it from here because it's a single file. Run. And run. Starting up Tricks, we can see our dashboard that tells us all the specs and everything. We can even save the BIOS if we want to edit it. You can also see that we're enabled for a resizable bar. That's great. You can see your driver version and then all of your clocks moving in real time. Hardware monitor is kind of sort of the same thing, but we have graphs showing you everything in real time. Tricks Boost is basically overclocking without really overclocking the card. You get better performance. Nitro Glow is the RGB portion. As you see, we're in that orange, and this orange is the color itself. FF for R, 35 for G, and B is 00, and here's the color. But we're not concerned with that color unless you want to leave it that color. Here's everything, just record that. You can select a single color. Rainbow color here so that it changes color however you'd like it to change. You can change the speed as well. Serial. Runway. That's the only part of the card that's actually lit. The other part that I was telling you about is utilizing the MSI software or the motherboard software. We can select external source. Since we have that ARGB cable connected, we'll go over to MSI center. We'll close out of Tricks here since we don't need it right now. And then we can select to join everything here. Let's go ahead and, okay, so everything's good there. And maybe because we had that enabled, join everything there. So now everything is rainbow, and if we wanted to change it, let's do breathing. Now, because we've used that ARGB cable connected directly to the motherboard, we've used Tricks to bypass Tricks so that MSI Center or Asus or whatever software utility you use for ARGB, so that that can manage it. So this card allows you to do that, which is great. So in this video, I've gone over how to prepare your system for a brand new graphics card. Then after that, we've removed the old graphics card, popped in the brand new graphics card, and then installed the drivers and all of the software, and then also showed you how to utilize your ARGB lighting so that not only you can change the card itself, you can change your entire system to match your card. This is Iggy with ThisBytesForYou, showing you how to install the Sapphire Pure RX 7700 XT Frostpunk 2 Edition. Iggy with ThisBytesForYou out. See you guys.